Good evening, everybody. This is Pastor Nelson Lee. As some of you know, I'm also a meteorologist in my other life, so given all that's going on out there in the world of weather, I wanted to give you guys some weather updates, especially for all my friends and family that are out there on the East Coast and also in the great state of Texas. Taking a look at the satellite picture, we have a lot going on and a lot to talk about. Have an area of disturbed weather in the northwest Caribbean Sea. It's called 95L, and it's going to be moving into the Gulf of Mexico over the next couple of days and could threaten the Texas coast with a tropical depression or tropical storm Thursday or Friday. If it does develop and does move towards the Texas coast, which I think it will, probably looking at landfall somewhere around the middle to lower Texas coast, somewhere in that area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Big player in the weather, though, is out there in the central Atlantic. Hurricane Florence, major hurricane, moving towards the west-northwest right now, and headed towards extreme northeast South Carolina or southwest North Carolina, somewhere in this area right here, right around to Wilmington area. But that's not where the fun with this is going to stop. It's going to stall out over the Carolinas and Virginia and produce life-threatening flooding, and we'll talk about that as well. So also out in the Atlantic, we have Isaac and we have Helene. Here is Isaac right here, and here's Helene. Isaac is continuing to move off towards the west, and Helene is going to recurve out harmlessly. Going to be a fish storm, almost a major hurricane right now. Got a good-looking eye on it. Isaac, still a little bit too early to call what it's going to do. Some of the models are bringing it up across the Dominican Republic. Some want to bring it out a little bit further to the west. I do believe, though, that we don't have a lot to worry about here in Texas. Maybe towards the eastern Gulf of Mexico in a couple of weeks you may need to worry about this if it does manage to make it through the Caribbean. As far as Texas goes, I'm not too worried about it. Looks like in a couple of weeks we may actually get a cold front come down, and that would tend to move it. If it does get into the Gulf, that would tend to recurve it up towards the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So I'm not too worried about Isaac. I'll focus for Texas needs to be right now on 95L. So let's take a little bit closer look at what's actually going on in the tropics. You can see the Hurricane Center right now has identified this area of disturbed weather and given it a 50% chance of development over the next 5 days, and thinks that the best chance of development, of course, is once it gets into the central Gulf, northwest Gulf of Mexico, somewhere off the south or central Texas coast. And of course, here we have Florence, looking at 140-mile-an-hour winds, central pressure of 939 millibars. There's Isaac, barely hanging on as a hurricane, and Helene, Category 2 storm, but again, it's going to go harmlessly off into the Atlantic. So let's take a look at the satellite picture, a little bit better satellite picture here. You can see Florence, classic Category 4 hurricane, clear eye, good convection around the center of the storm, chugging off towards the west, west-northwest. And then there's our area of disturbed weather out here in the northwest Caribbean Sea. You see it right here. I'm going to change the color palette so it can show up a little bit better. You see it right here. And I want you to see something about here, about our area of disturbed weather. And I'm going to show a little bit different satellite picture. This is called a water vapor imagery. And I want you to notice something. I want you to notice how we have some upper level winds that are coming through here. And this is what's causing this blow up of thunderstorms right now. A lot of wind shear over this system. That's why I'm not too worried about it in the near term. This wind shear is going to have to get out of here before this system can do anything. So if we look at the global forecasting system right now, and we go back in time here, let me go back here. And you can see this upper level low sitting right off the northern coast of the Yucatan, and that's creating that wind shear of the system. But watch what happens as we go forward in time. You can see those strong winds, the 20, 30, 40 mile-an-hour winds that are over the system right now. They generally go away. And what happens as the storm system approaches the upper Texas coast is you get this sort of high pressure aloft. And that's what we call venting. And this is what you want to see over a tropical system. You don't want to see this shear that we're seeing right now. If we go back in time, you see this right now. You see these strong upper level winds. You don't want to see that. Well, I guess if you don't want to see a hurricane, you do want to see that. But a tropical system needs this upper level anticyclone in order to develop. And that's kind of what is starting to set up as the system nears the Texas coast. Also pay attention to what's going on over here with Florence. We're going to look a little bit closer at that here in a second. But Florence in the GFS system, forecast system, stalls off the coast. I really don't buy that. I think the global forecasting system, it has a tendency to get on drugs sometimes. Just say no to drugs, kids. Sometimes the GFS does that. I believe what's really going to happen is it's going to come up into here and it's just going to sit for a few days as the steering currents collapse. And you can kind of see that on the upper level chart. You can see we have some really good steering currents to start off with, but they don't last. They don't last. So going forward here, let's look at what the Hurricane Center is calling for with Florence. So with Florence, it's calling for a major hurricane to make landfall just around Wilmington. I think that's a pretty good call. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe a little bit south of Wilmington, maybe somewhere right in here, but it's really six of one, half a dozen of the other. So looking forward at what we call our ensemble models. What an ensemble model is imagine a choir. You have different models singing different parts. The model I just showed you, this is a solo model. This is a soloist singing one model run, whereas this model run here is a bunch of different parts being sung. And the good thing about it is kind of gives you an idea of an overall pattern that's being played. Because sometimes, you know, I've heard some soloists that just god awful, but choirs, I've rarely heard a choir that's bad. So looking at the European, the EPS ensemble, you kind of get an idea of what's being played out here, what song is being sung, and you can see that of all the members, and I can't remember exactly how many members, there's like 50-something members, there's 50-something members in this choir, and they're all putting the center somewhere in South and North Carolina, with most of them placing it right in here. But I also want you to notice what's going on down here off the coast of Texas. They're singing another song. They're singing a song of development right south of Matagorda off the coast of Corpus. Now, what does this mean for the Houston area? Got a lot of friends in the Houston area. I live in the Houston area. Well, what that means is we'll be on the dirty side. Probably some gusty tropical storm force winds right along the coast. I'm not too worried about tropical storm force winds. You can get that in thunderstorms. But what I would be worried about is rainfall. We're going to be getting a lot of rainfall over the next couple of days anyway, with an area of upper level disturbed weather that's over us. You add this tropical moisture that's coming in late Thursday and Friday, and it looks like it might want to hang around a little bit. Let's see what the ensemble says. Yeah, it's going to hang around a little bit. So what I wouldn't be surprised to see happen over the next few days is that this area here gets anywhere between 5 to 10 inches of rain, and then somewhere in this area here we get 10 to 15 inches of rain. So that's the European ensemble. Well, the GFS also has an ensemble, and let's see what song they're singing. You can see that with Florence, they're singing a little bit different tune, but yet they're really got a wide variety here. You can see some of them are singing over here and and singing just off the coast or just inland here, but yet there's a lot of them singing over here too. And so given that, I really still like the fact that it's coming in here and it's going to just sit and spin and dump a lot of rain. But again, back close to home here in Texas, we have the GFS also singing the same tune that the European is singing, and that is some kind of tropical development off the central South Texas coast, somewhere in here, bringing a lot of rain with it. So somewhere in this area, right in here, we're probably going to see 10 inches, 15 inches, somewhere over the next week or so. So moving forward, let's take a look at Florence. I want to really pay attention to Florence. Now, we got plenty of time to talk about this. I'll cut more videos on this as we go forward, especially if something develops. Right now, hurricane hunters are out there in Florence. They just went through, found out that the storm had not strengthened. It's probably peaked out a little bit. Again, you know, looking at it on the satellite image, yeah, it doesn't look like it's gotten any better organized. Looks like it may be going through another little burst of convection, but pressure 942 millibars. It was 939. So it looks like it's pretty steady right now. Taking a look at the computer models for Florence, once again, they're pretty much grouped right into North Carolina, and then as you can see, the 96 and 120 hour plots are all pretty close together. That means that the steering currents are going to collapse. The big ridge of high pressure that is right now just to the north of Florence, that is causing it to really head off in this general direction. Well, what's going to happen is that's just going to absolutely collapse, and you're going to get in what Florence is going to get caught in what we call a call, and where you have just nothing going on. It's just going to sit here and spin. And when tropical systems sit and spin, it's not a good thing. Everybody remember what happened to Harvey last year in Texas? Well, that's not a good thing in areas that have a lot of mountains. As bad as it was in Texas, it will be worse here in North Carolina and Virginia. If you live in North Carolina and Virginia and you live near streams or rivers, you need to be making preparations now. This is the Weather Prediction System's rainfall forecast for the next 7 days. You can see down here in Texas, we have some general areas of 5 to 7 inches, especially down here along the mid and lower coast. A general rule of thumb to use when you look at this map is take the numbers that are on this map and then multiply them by 1.5 to 2. And what that's going to do is give you your local rain. So this is your broad area of rain. In other words, the general area here is going to see between 5 to 7 inches, but somewhere in here might see 10 to 14 inches. So if you're sitting off in this area and you got 5 inches sitting over you, somewhere in here could see 7.5 to 10 inches. May not be you, could be your neighbor. But getting to the really dangerous part, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at what's going on in North Carolina and Virginia. I can't stress this enough. You've got a wide swath of 10, isolated 15 inches of rainfall. What that means is locally 20 to 30 inches of rainfall over North Carolina and Virginia. I cannot stress enough how dangerous this is when you put this over mountainous and hilly terrain. It doesn't stay on the hill. There's this little thing that Isaac Newton they say he discovered, but I bet people figured it out before that. It's called gravity, and it doesn't stay on the hill. It flows down to the lowest area, and if you live near those lower areas, you need to be preparing now. You need to be making your preparations now. I want to show you the Virginia watersheds. You've got the James River, and you've got the Roanoke, and you've got the York, and you've got all these other little watersheds in here. And I want to put back on here 10 to 20 inches over this area, isolated 30. And I want, if you live in these areas, I want you to figure out what that would do to you. Again, and then all the way up into here, we have 3, 5, and 7. All the way up into Washington, D.C. And then North Carolina, we have the News, Tar Pamlico, Cape Fear. Again, if we go back, we have a large swath of 10, 7, 10. So this will be isolated 15 and 20 inch amounts. And the GFS and the European are putting down large areas of 15 to 20, isolated 40 inches in some areas of North Carolina and Virginia over these areas. Right in here and up into Virginia, this area here. You can see, looking at the map, the number of rivers that are in this area. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very dangerous situation. Freshwater flooding kills more people than landfalling hurricanes. It kills more people than wind. It kills more people than storm surge. It kills more people than tornadoes and lightning. Freshwater flooding is the most dangerous thing about hurricanes. So when you look at pictures like this with a Category 4 hurricane sitting out in the Atlantic, the number one thing you must be concerned about is not storm surge, unless of course you live on the beach. It is not tornadoes. It is not wind damage. The number one thing that the average person must be concerned with is freshwater flooding. It kills 90% of all people. When you look at storm deaths, 90% of all people die because of freshwater flooding today. And this is what I'm concerned with Hurricane Florence. That Hurricane Florence is going to come in, and it's going to stall, and it's going to produce copious amounts of rain over the southeastern United States. You need to be making your preparations now. We need to be praying for our friends and family. You need to be checking on them. If you have friends and family, you need to be making them aware that it's not about the landfall, it's about the stall. Again, I want to say that again. It's not about the landfall, it's about the stall. It's about the rain. God bless you. I'll be updating these weather videos. They won't be near as long. I'll definitely be keeping my friends and family up to date on what's going on the Texas coast. May everybody have a blessed evening. Good night.